Tonight on Ukraine Today, severe weather as a weapon, the consequences of Russian strikes on Ukraine's energy system and plans to attack substations at Ukrainian nuclear power plants. Washington is losing trust. How likely is the creation of a new security alliance instead of NATO, without the United States, but with Ukraine? A distorted diplomatic reality. Trump has invited Putin to join a so-called peace council. All this and more, right now. Hello, I'm Volodymyr Robchun, and this is Ukraine Today. Please subscribe, hit the like button, and let's move on to the news. I think it's worth starting with Ukrainian drone strikes. They paid a visit to Saratov and Engels. Reports are coming in about explosions at one of the local oil refineries. This information is still being clarified. Now, some pleasant numbers that add context to the previous story. In 2025, Ukraine's security service eliminated Russian air defense assets worth $4 billion. Long-range strikes by special forces destroyed or disabled launchers, radar stations, and surveillance systems. As a result, safe corridors have appeared within Russia's multi-layered air defense, allowing Ukrainian long-range drones to operate more effectively. Russian occupiers are pulling reserves toward Pokrovsk in an attempt to break through Ukrainian defenses. This was stated by the commander-in-chief of the armed forces of Ukraine, General Alexander Syrsky. According to him, Russia is using both mass assaults and small infantry groups. More details from the battlefield in the report.
Putin's new obsession is the capture of Vovchansk in the Kharkiv region. The occupying army has repeatedly tried to break through the Ukrainian armed forces' defenses in this particular settlement using their numerical advantage. According to the Joint Forces grouping, the enemy is conducting offensive operations in Vovchansk as well as towards Kravsky, Vovchansky, Kutory and Zibino. In addition, Russian troops have repeatedly attacked Ukrainian positions in the direction of Detyarne and Krukhle. This is specifically about expanding the gray zone without fully securing it, but with constant probing of our defenses.
And in the east, we are observing a regrouping of forces. In many areas, the Russians are regrouping their troops, and at the same time, they are already bringing in reinforcements. They are transferring not the second echelons, but the third and fourth ones to key areas, roughly speaking. This indicates that the forces originally intended to accomplish the primary objective, to break through our defenses, have already been depleted.
As a result, instead of real successes at the front, the Russian army has shifted to massively inventing imaginary victories. For example, in the village of Privolye in the Donetsk region. The day before, pro-Kremlin telegram channels began actively spreading information about advances in the Slavyansk direction and the capture of the aforementioned settlement there.
This historic and long-standing settlement, which has served as a central hub for the local community for many generations, continues to stand as a testament to the enduring spirit and architectural heritage of the people who first established their homes and livelihoods within its original boundaries many years ago. With shouts and hysterics, they yell at the so-called Minister of Defense of the so-called Russian Federation of Belarus. It is all about how it is all deceptive lies and falsehoods. The
information about the capture of yet another village in Donbas by the occupiers was denied by the Vostok military group, stating that Ukrainian forces are holding the line near Pokrovsk, Mirnohrad, and towards Slovyansk. Here is more video evidence of the enemy's colossal losses. For example, the roads near Pokrovsk are turning into a graveyard of enemy equipment destroyed by Ukrainian drones. And this is the precise work of our valiant Air Force. The American GBU-39 precision-guided bomb delivers a powerful strike against enemy drone operator positions, houses with enemy personnel, and Russian ammunition depots. Our fighters are also giving the occupiers no respite. The 3rd Assault Brigade, the day before they managed to blow up an enemy Grad rocket launcher to pieces, along with all its ammunition and a truck packed with enemy personnel. But despite the colossal losses at the front, Russian generals stubbornly keep trying to advance, losing thousands of soldiers killed and wounded every day. The last few days have been intense for the occupiers in the Kupiansk direction. Military analysts confirm this. On the northern flank in the city, our units are advancing through the forest near the Oskil River. The occupiers, meanwhile, are being forced to retreat from several well-fortified enemy strongholds near Kupiansk at once.
The rapid advance is quite something, sometimes even negative. The situation in part of Kupiansk is especially amusing. So, once again, these Russian figures in military uniforms, now without Putin, are claiming that they've captured everything, particularly in Kupiansk. They say they've taken Kupiansk, Uzlovy. This information does not correspond to reality. By the way, this is also being reported by MNZ and war correspondents. So, don't get ahead of yourself.
I would also like to highlight the success of the AFU east of Peshenoy. Our forces have advanced toward the R07 highway, thereby reducing the distance to Stepnaya Novoselka. This puts pressure on enemy logistics and forces them to respond by bringing in more and more reserves. The defense forces confirm increased enemy activity in the Zaporizhzhia region. According to intelligence data, the Russian Federation has decided to reinforce its groups in the Gulyai-Pol and Orekov directions. This was reported by the spokesperson for the Southern Defense Forces, Vladislav Voloshin. He explained that such rotations indicate the significant impact of enemy losses on the combat capability of units in the Zaporizhzhia direction.
The enemy conducted about 50 combat engagements over the past day. Of these, 31 engagements took place in the Gulyai-Pol area, one of the most difficult sectors.
The occupiers simply have nowhere to get reserves from, so lately the Russian army has increasingly relied on its air force.
The enemy is actively using airstrikes with precision-guided controlled aerial bombs. They do this in order to destroy our positions and buildings in those settlements they are attacking, which are located near the line of contact.
Thus, the Russian army is taking revenge on the Ukrainian armed forces and peaceful Ukrainians for another successful special operation deep behind enemy lines, military analysts say. Another slap in the face was delivered personally to Putin and his cardboard generals. Ukrainian drones once again struck the Kapustin Yar training ground. It is from there that Russia launches intercontinental ballistic missiles, including the Oreshnik, except for the Oreshnik launches. The Kapustin Yar training ground? It has been actively used for testing a large number of various short and medium-range weapons, cruise missiles, and Russian air defense systems and complexes. Now, thanks to Ukrainian combat drones, this work has been put on hold by the Kremlin.
In 2025, losses among Ukrainian service members decreased by 13%. This was also reported by General Syrsky. At the same time, over 2024 and 2025, enemy losses exceeded 850,000 occupiers. For the past 24 hours alone, Russia lost at least 1,020 troops killed and wounded. Since the start of the full-scale invasion, total Russian losses have reached 1,227,440. In addition, during the past day, Ukraine's defense forces destroyed 2 Russian tanks, 3 armored combat vehicles, 39 artillery systems and dozens of other pieces of enemy military equipment. Now to the topic of Russian terror, because how else can we describe what the occupiers are doing? In Odessa, Russian strikes severely damaged an energy facility, leaving more than 30,000 families without electricity. Energy workers are doing everything possible to restore power. Russia also attacked a critical infrastructure site in Kharkiv with 4 missiles. There is significant damage. In the Chernihiv region, nearly 100 settlements have been left without electricity due to enemy strikes. The most difficult situation is the northern communities of the region. The occupiers are using severe weather as a weapon. Intelligence reports that Russia plans to attack substations at Ukrainian nuclear power plants in order to plunge the country into total darkness and force capitulation. But, and this is a very big but, Russian strikes on Ukraine's energy system trigger a legitimate mirror response. Details next.
Putin is willing to do anything to force Ukraine to surrender.
I don't think anyone would argue with that.
Meanwhile, Ukraine is going through its toughest winter yet. Since the start of the full-scale war, Russia has intensified missile and drone strikes on energy infrastructure.
It is precisely Russian missiles, Russian Shaheds, and Russia's determination to destroy Ukraine that are clear evidence that Russia is not interested in any agreements.
Ukraine's main intelligence directorate reports that the Kremlin is considering scenarios involving strikes on substations that power Ukrainian nuclear power plants. In this way, the terrorists want to force Kiev to accept unacceptable terms for ending the war.
The enemy is trying to show that you should put pressure on Ukraine so that we can bring this situation, which is called a war of attrition, to an end as soon as possible. Unfortunately, they call it something a little different. And today they are already moving into a mode of nuclear terrorism. This is already one of the last red lines on our side that they might cross.
We are sharing the relevant data with our partners, warning them about the potentially catastrophic consequences. It's time for the world, including the IAEA and the leading global powers that value nuclear safety, to speak out and issue clear warnings to Moscow, forcing it to abandon such reckless plans.
And this comes after with the mediation of the IAEA. The Russians talked about a ceasefire in the area of the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant in order to repair the last remaining backup power line.
The IAEA is a large, closed club of like-minded interests. The club includes those countries with the largest nuclear power generation. One of the largest countries that sponsors the IAEA is the Russian Federation. And Rosatom, along with the Rosatom fleet, are, of course, the biggest donors to the IAEA.
The IAEA mission visited and assessed 10 substations after receiving reports of explosions nearby.
Teams at the Chernobyl nuclear power plant and the Khmelnytsky nuclear power plant were informed that on January 11th and 15th, drones were spotted there, flying within a 5-kilometer radius. A large number of explosions were heard at the Khmelnytsky nuclear power plant, including some near the facility itself. The team at the South Ukraine nuclear power plant reported numerous air raid alerts, including one approximately 10 kilometers from the facility. A military flying object was also spotted.
According to the main intelligence directorate, these are targeted attacks on elements of the power system that connect the nuclear power plant units to the country's unified power grid.
By destroying or disabling these substations, Moscow aims to disconnect the nuclear power plant units from Ukraine's unified power system, leaving Ukrainians completely without electricity and heat. According to reports available as of mid-January 2026, Russian military forces had conducted extensive reconnaissance operations on 10 distinct critical energy infrastructure facilities located across 9 different regions of Ukraine.
At the station or the open switchgear of nuclear power plants, it's like a two-way road. First and foremost, a nuclear power plant is designed to supply electricity to the grid, providing most regions of Ukraine with a stable power supply schedule. Then there, green energy or thermal generation is added depending on whether it's morning, evening or daytime. But this is the foundation of our energy system. And these substations currently provide us with an average of 62 to 68% of electricity generation. In the
event of the destruction or disabling of a substation, as intelligence claims, Russia is aiming to isolate nuclear power plants from the energy system. This could lead to large-scale power and heating outages for the civilian population.
There's no need to panic. You should stock up on warm clothes, make sure you have clean, warm items, and keep a few reserves on hand, blankets. And we will get through this difficult period as well, even though it will be very tough for all regional centers and large cities if the enemy attempts to strike open distribution facilities and major substations of nuclear power plants.
In addition to the fact that the Kremlin dictator continues to terrorize Ukrainians, he is betting that this will help him strengthen his position. Pressure on Europe and the West.
The enemy is demonstrating that terror, especially now as the wind direction is changing and there is an active air mass, could in some super emergency scenarios, though I don't think this will happen, carry combustion products, radionuclides and so on toward the European Union. This is also a major threat to the stability of the situation in the European Union. First and foremost, this concerns Poland, the Czech Republic and Slovakia. In
December 2025, the Director General of the IAEA stated that the situation in Ukraine's energy system has been at its worst since September 2024. Since the moment when the International Atomic Energy Agency began monitoring substations that are critical for nuclear safety and protection,
the ongoing instability in Ukraine's power grid continues to undermine nuclear safety. Although backup systems have functioned properly, repeated losses of external power and limited backup capacity increase the risk and heighten the need for reliable external electricity supply.
He once again called for maximum restraint in the use of force, emphasizing safety.
The strikes on Ukraine's power grid appear to be coordinated for maximum disruption. Their frequency and scale underscore that the overall stability of the grid is deteriorating, not improving. No one wants a nuclear accident and no one would benefit from it.
Twice already, at the end of last year, there were attacks on IAEA mission vehicles by FPV drones in temporarily occupied territories. Therefore, trusting the IAEA, and there were none there. Decisions. After that, it's almost impossible to trust the IAEA or believe that they have any real influence here.
Rosatom occupies and maintains an exceptionally strong, consistently reliable, and profoundly honorable position within all the essential and critical infrastructure systems of the Russian state.
Since the start of the heating season in October 2025, Russians have carried out more than 250 strikes on Ukraine's energy sector. But Ukraine can deliver a mirror response to Russia. Moreover, there are already results. Our defenders are already striking Russian energy and logistics facilities of the enemy.
Can you even see over there? You can see the CHP plant over there. There. And do you see that smoke over there? Wait, are you actually being serious right now? Bam 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 bam.
Ukraine is fighting for freedom. Support independent Ukrainian journalism so we can keep telling the truth about Russia's war. Click the link in the description to become our sponsor. Now is a perfect moment to subscribe, like this video and share it. Thank you and glory to Ukraine. Several EU countries are considering the creation of a new security alliance as an alternative to NATO. This is reported by Politico. The discussion comes amid growing tensions with the United States, or more precisely with President Trump, over Greenland. According to the publication, Ukraine could become a key element of this new alliance due to its large army, advanced drone industry and real battlefield experience. Meanwhile, the United States is introducing additional tariffs against its allies, who refuse to support President Trump's plans to seize or buy Greenland. Next, on how global security architecture is changing due to controversial territorial ambitions. I'm saying this and realizing it sounds like an intro to a story about Putin's Russia, but no. This time, it's about the United States.
The US strikes at Europe over the Greenland issue. Donald Trump has announced the introduction of tariffs against a number of European countries that disagree with his position on Greenland. Starting from
February 1st, 2026, all the aforementioned countries, Denmark, Norway, Sweden, France, Germany, the United Kingdom, the Netherlands, and Finland, will be subject to a 10% tariff on all goods shipped to the United States of America. Starting June 1st, 2026, the tariffs will be increased to 25%. This tariff will remain in effect until a full and comprehensive agreement is reached on the purchase of Greenland.
The American tariffs have affected Europeans who, at Denmark's invitation, had previously sent a symbolic number of their soldiers to the icy island. For example, Paris and Berlin sent 15 and 13 servicemen, while London and Amsterdam sent only 10 each. Just one each.
No intimidation or threats will affect us. Not in Ukraine, not in Greenland, nor anywhere else in the world. Tariff threats are unacceptable and inappropriate in this context.
The issue of Greenland is directly connected to the war in Ukraine. Some European politicians, such as the Prime Minister of Spain, Pedro Sanchez, believe that Washington's aggression against Greenland will legitimize Putin's aggression. According to the head of EU diplomacy, Kaja Kallas, watching the situation around the island, Beijing and Moscow are popping champagne.
China and Russia are surely rejoicing these days. They are the ones who benefit from discord among the allies. If Greenland's security is threatened, we can resolve it within NATO.
Military political analysts hold a different opinion. In Greenland, the US president is simultaneously striking at China and Russia, while also putting pressure on Europe.
Notice, it's very clear. The priorities and adversaries have been named: the Russian Federation and the People's Republic of China. In other words, there is no such diplomatic veiled term as authoritarian regimes or rogue states. The adversaries are named very clearly. A so-called axis of evil has been formed, which not only the United States, but also accordingly its European partners must oppose. This is a continuation of that same tactic, Trump's tactic of putting pressure on Europe. Let me remind you. At one time, Trump successfully resolved the issue of increasing NATO's budget funding to 5%.
Greenland and the Arctic are strategically important regions for both the West and for China and Russia. At the same time, China and Russia are forced to split their attention between the Arctic region and their own border areas, namely Taiwan and Ukraine.
That is the Russian Federation, against the backdrop of increased US military activity in this strategic region, is being forced to act. It will also divert personnel to strengthen the Russian Federation's military presence in this region and to match its military technical capabilities. And let me remind you, Arctic units are currently fighting in the territory of Donetsk region.
Ultimately, pressure from the White House should prompt Europeans to strengthen their military component and force China and Russia to redistribute their military resources.
The European Union is preparing to impose tariffs on American goods. This is reported by Financial Times. The move is a response to Trump's threats over Greenland and to US tariffs. And finally, a story from some kind of distorted reality. Attention! Putin has been invited to join a so-called Peace Council that will oversee the reconstruction of the Gaza sector. This is reported by Bloomberg. Let me remind you, it is Trump who decides who is invited to this organization. There is one condition: to join, a country must pay $1 billion. I'm sure Putin has that kind of money. I'm also sure that a war criminal whose country cooperates with Hamas terrorists, the de facto authorities in Gaza who organized and carried out the massacre of October 7th, 2023 in Israel, has no place on any peace council. So the question is Washington ignoring the facts or playing a complex game? I hope we'll find out soon. That's all for today. Thanks for watching. Thank you for your support. Strength to Ukraine's defenders. Glory to Ukraine. Don't forget to like, subscribe, comment and share. See you next time.